story because we're on the cusp of migrating from an architecture that is archaic, that is highly vulnerable. It is highly centralized, meaning that when there's a fault, as we had in 2003, which I showed in the opening slide, that fault does not limit itself to a certain area. It propagates, and it could potentially, in the cases that we've heard about, like electromagnetic pulse, those kind of faults could propagate across the entire continent. And we can all imagine what that might mean for civilization. I don't even want to ponder that. We've had some short discussions about that. But I do want to take a moment to introduce the leader of the panel, a good friend, Chuck Manto, who I've known for a number of years now. He's been the inspiration for a number of initiatives in InfraGard and other associations. Chuck is the one who began the EMP-SIG initiative within the InfraGard movement, which was the creation of awareness of what the risks are that are confronting us with the entire electrical grid sector. And Chuck is now going to introduce all the panelists that we have before us. These are all people who have a great deal of expertise. We've heard from a number of them. And I really look forward to their opinions. I welcome them to our stage. Let's give them all a big round of applause.
Thank you, John. This is a great collection of groups between NASA and COSI and SAE. You are so blessed to have had John introduce us to get your attention. Otherwise, I'd start singing, you know, everybody. Oops, sorry about that. So I'm not going to do that. What I will do is make certain I kick off this illustrious panel. And what we're going to do in terms of process is we're going to go down the rows, and each of them are going to introduce themselves. They can take a minute to do that or less. And then after they do their introductions, Terry Boston, I was going to call, I don't know what kind of a title I should give him because he's done so many things that he can't call you the Right Reverend Dr. Honorable, but he'll introduce himself. And all of us who are a little older, we've got the problem, the older we are, the more stories we have to tell, and the less time we have to tell them. So we're going to be honored by having Terry Boston go first, and Dr. Elizabeth Cook will sort of wrap things up, but I'm first going to have each of them introduce themselves, and if they forget to tell their names, I'll say, what's your name again? So I don't have to give out any real content. I'm just playing moderator and expediter or whatever you might want to call it. We'll see what it will require. And then, when they do that, I'm hoping they will ask questions of each other. And then we're going to hope that you ask questions of them. They might even have an interest in asking questions back to you. We have this one gentleman with a microphone who is a professional with a microphone. He's going to get that microphone to you quickly. And one of the reasons for all of this is between what we're doing now and the workshop tomorrow, between 10 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon on microgrids, is to have all these people who are sometimes movers and shakers or observers or something significant in this whole industry, to ask ourselves, what is it we need to do between now and the next few years, say 2030, to make all this happen? And hopefully by the time we leave here tomorrow afternoon at 4, we're going to have some specific recommendations that we want to be able to make. Now, some of you may have some recommendations of your own that you would like to have included in that pile of recommendations. So you hunt us down and provide your ideas as well, and we'll gather them all up. And after we go home tomorrow with our rough draft, within about 2 weeks, we hope to circulate that so we have some concrete recommendations that we can all say that we've made between this panel, the workshop tomorrow, and those of you who have been participating, and we will turn them back over to John Uhans, who will see that they are worthy of his publication as outcomes of the conference that we're doing today. So a little more explanation than I intended, but that's my welcoming of you to be thoughtfully engaged in what we're doing today. So starting with that as a backdrop, I'll now turn to Terry Boston, and everybody's got a mic, so they will start with their name and some significant thing about what they're doing, and you can go for even a minute, because you can each then go for about 5 minutes and talk about the issues that you most want to address. Terry?
I'm Terry Boston. Despite the introduction that Chuck gave me, and I had the this morning. I did not know Thomas Edison personally, but I did start my career 51 years ago in an underground bunker that was fifth on the Soviet Union target list, so I have had a lot of exposure to things that can go wrong and do go wrong. And I have come to the conclusion late in my career that microgrids are probably the right solution for critical functions like our military bases and others. I was the CEO for 8 years of PJM, and PJM is the largest grid in North America. I had the opportunity to serve as president of the very large grid operators of the world, nothing to do with microgrids there. We serve 3.8 billion people, 15 companies. So I am very honored to be here, and I want to thank John again for inviting me.
So I'm Dr. Peter Lilienthal. Started distributed generation with my dissertation back in, not quite as long, but on the optimal control of distributed generation. But I really got started with microgrids when I was at NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab. As a response to the Earth Summit, we were commissioned to help developing countries to electrify their rural areas, create a village power program, and that was really all about microgrids. They're called mini grids in the developing world. So I created the Homer software, which is several 100,000 users around the world, and have enhanced it continuously since then, and moved beyond rural areas, developing countries, microgrids on islands, and ever since Sandy, it's become a big deal here in a little over 48 for resilience. So we licensed Homer out of NREL in 2009, created a small company, Homer Energy, created new versions of Homer for grid-connected microgrids and other hybrid systems, and were acquired by Underwriters Laboratory in 2019. So as of a year ago, I'm sort of a free agent. We still do a little bit with UL, teach a course on microgrids at University of Colorado, creating a course, an online course on microgrids with the University of Alaska, and work with a couple of microgrid developers. So microgrids have been my entire career for 30 years or more. And like Terry said, they are the only way you can have bulletproof reliability and resilience for critical infrastructure and emergency facilities, and actually high penetration renewables for that matter.
My name is Matt Haupt. I'm the Navy Energy Director up in the Navy Yard here in the area. Come on by you a cup of coffee. Unlike my compatriot here, I couldn't spell microgrids about 10 years ago. Now I'm running them. I'm a retired Navy officer, CEC, Civil Engineer Corps. After I retired, went to the dark side of the public side for helping out the military. They asked me back to run the energy program for the Navy. Shore installations, not operational energy necessarily, but basically been in that job for about 5 years, enjoying the heck out of it, and just really looking at microgrids to help us with resiliency, reliability, efficiency for the mission of the Navy. And that's critical to us, to the military. Mission is first. What we're supposed to do is protect our country, put warheads in the foreheads of the bad guys, but we can't do that if we don't have the ability to have that shore infrastructure. And we actually look at the shore infrastructure as an extension of that weapons platform. Doesn't matter if you're Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Boy Scouts, or Girl Scouts, you've got to complete that mission, and that energy really comes important to make sure that we can succeed in that. So really happy to be here, and I'm not a doctor, I'm like the people up here, but hopefully I come off as sounding what I know is an important subject.
I'm Norm Campbell. I'm with Siemens. I'm a federal business development manager for power, microgrids, EV infrastructure. And I come to this arena from the energy side, from a utility perspective. And I started in microgrids about 6 or 7 years ago with operational microgrids. These are the ones for forward operating bases. So we're talking 30 to 60 to 120 kW that you can tow around or put on a truck and take it all over the place. And it's grown from there to facilities and expanding trying to stay below utility grade, where I think the fun is, trying to get resilience and operational capabilities at the facility in the campus setting, and get a chance to apply some really good technology and get a chance to work with some really neat people.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Theory. I am the Director of External Affairs and Entity Engagement at Reliability First. My journey started back in 2003 when I started with First Energy, and I was in the utility business for about 11 years. I was in substation design, I did some protection studies, but I spent most of my time in a control room environment. I was doing day-ahead studies, contingency analysis, and outage coordination. About 9 years ago, I joined Reliability First. For those of you who do not know who Reliability First is, we work with NERC following the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Following the blackout, the Energy Policy Act of 2005 gave the responsibility to NERC and the regions, and we're one of the regions, we cover from about Wisconsin to New Jersey, to enforce and audit the NERC reliability standards, and that is to preserve the reliability, resilience, and security of the grid. So ultimately, we exist to prevent the next large blackout. And we take, for those of you who don't know about the NERC reliability standards, we're ensuring that the utilities are maintaining their relays, using three-part communication, they have cybersecurity studies, they're doing their patching, voltage control, vegetation management, and all of those things. At Reliability First, I had several different roles. I was in audit, so I was going out to the utilities, the big utilities in the Midwest, American Electric Power, First Energy, Exelon, PJM, MISO, Duquesne, Dayton, many others. So I was in audit. I was also in event analysis, where we were reviewing events on the system. And event analysis was really interesting because even in the Midwest, we don't have a large penetration of renewables yet. However, we could learn from our neighbors and other interconnects. We could learn from the events in Texas and in California regarding how the inverter-based resources work. And we could learn those lessons so that we can implement them differently here in the Midwest. In my most latest role, I'm in entity engagement and external affairs, where we're working with state policymakers to ensure a reliable and resilient and secure grid transition. We know there's a lot of risks facing this country as we move to this greener grid. We want to make sure that we're managing the pace of change, that we maintain a diverse and reliable generation fleet. We want to make sure that we have the reserves we need, that they're secure, and that as we move through this transition, that we're doing everything we can to keep the lights on, because the grid of the future is going to work a lot different than the grid of today. It's a pleasure to be on this panel, and thank you so much for inviting me.
So I'm Dr. Elizabeth Cook. I am currently the Director of Advanced Grid Systems and Grid Modernization at Duquesne Light Company, which is an electric utility that serves Western Pennsylvania. It's a two-county utility. Our main city is the city of Pittsburgh. For all of you Cleveland folk might know the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm also currently a chair of the AEIC, which is the Association of Edison Illuminating Companies. It's an industry member organization that Thomas Edison stood up in 1887, so there's my tie to Edison. I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Pittsburgh, teaching the class more or less impacts of the grid due to electrification. Ironically, it's more or less the work that I do within the space of electric utilities. In regards to microgrids, my first love was transmission. I spent 12.5 years in the industry as a utility consultant, where I gathered data, built models, and ran studies to really inform, educate, and drive the awareness of how to specify equipment on board large generation plants such as 4,500 megawatts of wind in California. Then it was solar, then it was energy storage. And I was a road warrior, and my children started to ask where I was, so I had the benefit and the opportunity to come within the utility space, which was at Duquesne Light. And at that time, I came in as the senior plant manager of transmission planning. Very quickly, I started to see and listen and hear about all things distributed energy resource, which I do. I'm the host of a podcast that's sponsored by AEIC, for all of you that want to understand really distributed energy resources, and microgrid is one of those resources. So a part of my role currently in the utility space is really to look at it as a solution to the bigger issue of electrifying and preparing the grid for this ultimate reality, but also creating the storyline that this is very feasible, but really it's going to require a new generation of workforce, technical acumen, and capabilities within the utility to partner with all of those that have come before to really develop microgrids and really start to create the story of why a utility should use microgrids as an opportunity to build robust, resilient communities for really everything that everyone mentioned prior. So that's me in a nutshell. So thank you for having me here, and I look forward to sharing more.
And Dr. Cook, did I not remember correctly that at one time when you're doing your doctorate, you were considering studying electromagnetic effects or something? Was that correct?
Yeah, so I was working on my degree all through my career, and so there was about 2 or 3 years that I spent in the world of EMPs and GIC, so I became very well aware of, the importance of electromagnetic pulses and how we protect and prepare our large grid for such events. So yes.
And it was a little discouraging of a topic. Is that what was going on?
Right, it was. I didn't want to spend big my space, so it really got into data analytics and developing algorithms to identify system topology. So it was a complete pivot, but that has really taken me